Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome. Regardless of where we are on your screens, I'm Ana Maria Vaccaro, and I'm very fortunate to be here with Mr. Lorenzo. We represent we are two of the 5 college counselors, but that's not why you're here. You're here about, oh my God, I'm gonna get this financial aid package deal, and what is this stuff gonna look like? And, those are really, really, important questions to ask, right? Because every financial aid award letter is going to be different. These are just 2 random ones. It's like, wait a minute, what's what, right? And what we're going to do is kind of use 2 fake award letters for you guys and break it down. Now, what we're going to do is we don't want to make this purely lecture style. We want this to be just like an overview, how we would read it. Keeping in mind that even if you get an award letter from one UC, another one from another UC be totally different. And I have the very fortunate opportunity to present you the award letter from Disneyland University for Donald Duck. Donald Duck has been accepted. Yay! So a COA is a cost of attendance, right? Every school in the nation do it. Now, when you're reading these letters, you definitely want to read them. But for time's sake, we're not. But read them because they're so important. And you don't have to read this alone, but cost of attendance is what's the sticker price, right? This is before you put in all your coupons and discounts and everything. So tuition and fees, be prepared, they do go up every year, and that's why you apply for financial aid every year. Room and board, yes, that's food, right? And that could change a little bit. I get a triple, or maybe if I get a bigger meal, it gets a bigger price tag. So you have a little bit flexibility on the price. Transportation, that's not a direct cost, right? Because maybe I'm staying in the dorm, but remember, you may be flying back and forth from home. Yes, you will be flying back and forth from home. It will happen. Personal expenses, please use deodorant, so important. Books and supplies, that could also range, right? So books and supplies, right? Some you buy used books to be cheaper or higher. So every school you apply to has a different cost of attendance. If you literally do COA in the name of your school, boom, it shows up. But wait, so where's the free money, right? Where's the money? Well, congratulations, Donald Duck. With all that public speaking that no one can understand, you got a scholarship. Now, a lot of people get confused. Why is it this and this? Well, some schools are broken up either semesters or quarters. So you get those chunks in those time frames. So that means you don't have to pay up your college all $80,000 right away. It'll be broken up by terms, right? Depending if you're going to like UC Berkeley, a semester school versus UC Irvine, a quarter school, etc. Right? So that's free money, but it's not guaranteed you have it every year, because if, let's say, I have to maintain a 3.0 GPA, that could be taken away. So look what's the policy of that scholarship. But still, congratulations on that, Donald. Now, this is a federal direct unsubsidized loan. Now, federal direct means the government, our federal government, is giving you this money. And it's meaning they're giving it to you, but you got to pay them back with extra money. Think of it as a very, very, very low interest rate credit card that's protected under Title IV. So it's different than going to a bank, which could raise the rates or decrease it. But how do you know the difference between unsubsidized and these other ones? Well, unsubsidized, think of it, makes you unhappy. What? Because you're being charged interest. The max is $5,500 for the first year, and increase if you won the Eco Hero Scholarship or HSF Scholarship, etc. Well, guess what? If you get those scholarships, you don't need to accept the loans, but I would accept the scholarship from the campus itself too. Then the next one you see over here is the PLUS loan. So that means that's plus more of a burden for your family, right? That's where your parent or parents will say, hey, listen, if you need help paying this extra $50,000, we could give a loan. That again is protected under that Title IV through the federal government. So that means when it's federal, it can go to any college, right? And it varies for each campus because your need will be different, right? Again, they don't have to take the maximum $50,000. Maybe Uncle Lorenzo will give me some money to help out my kid, right? He's giving me 20,000 because he's just that type of guy, right? So then maybe I could say, can I have a 30,000? The interest rate usually is higher than unsubsidized loan. So that does accumulate as time goes on. Now, when you do take a loan, that is money that you need to actually go to a workshop to acknowledge, because it's serious business, right? It's something that, you need to pay back. You need to make sure, wait a minute, if I add 50 plus 5,500 plus the interest rate, there's a website called Fine Aid Calculator, loan calculator. You could Google it. And you'll be like, wait a minute, oh my God, when I graduate in 4 years, it's 60. So is that college worth house debt payment? That's why we're going to go the same times acceptance letter. There's no guidelines by law, but usually the month of April, and by May 1st, your SIR deadline, you have to decide. Take it away, Mr. Lorenzo.
All right. So this is our friend Mickey Mouse. So Ms. Ricard basically broke down a lot of the sort of the cost of attendance, right? So when you look on the award letter, you'll see that listed again, right? So the breakdown, and again, right, these fees are gonna differ, right? But cost of attendance is a universal term that all colleges use to say this is what our overall sticker price is, and here are all the components that make that, from tuition and fees, room and board, transportation, expenses, etc. For the most part, colleges are all using the same language there, but recognize that some might have other things in there that could be kind of separate differently. So you'll see similar to the Donald Duck letter, it's the same sort of breakdown here. The part that I'm going to spend a little bit more time breaking down here is that you can see that when you look at the estimated financial aid, you're going to notice that Mickey Mouse has a few other lines mentioned here in terms of other aid that is available. The first one you're going to see there is the federal Pell Grant. This is a need-based grant, so it's based on the household income, and this number can sort of range depending on kind of where you are. But you can see that Mickey here has an amount that's allocated, right? So when it is a grant, right, obviously the federal grant, the main thing we want you to be mindful of is like, this is money that is free. You don't have to pay this back, but it is a need-based grant that the government uses based on what you submit on the FAFSA. So that's information. If you've already filled that out, you can actually see whether or not that's something you might qualify for, and that range is going to vary depending on the school based on their cost of attendance. You also see right below that is the Cal Grant. So if you remember, now you may not remember, but because it's something that SI actually does on behalf of all the students in your senior year, we submit that GPA verification form on your behalf as a California student. Again, another need-based program, but California students are eligible for this need-based grant program that's sponsored by the state. And this is there's a fixed amount, and that fixed amount will depend on what kind of school you end up attending to. So you could qualify for a Cal Grant, but that number will be higher if it's for a private school in California, if it's a UC, or if it's a CSU. So that number will change. So again, that's a hypothetical number, but there's 3 different potential numbers. Similar to the federal Pell Grant, it is a need-based grant award. Now, keep in mind, the key word in Cal Grant is the word Cal in front, which represents California. This is a need-based award that you will only see for schools in which you've applied to and have been admitted to in the state of California. This is not money you're going to see in other potential schools outside of California. So definitely we don't want you to get thrown off when you say, oh, I got the Pell Grant, but I didn't get the Cal Grant, or I got this other grant, but I didn't get the Cal Grant. So just remember that you're only going to see that for schools specifically for California colleges you've been admitted to, that you can qualify for that. And it is also possible for a community college, and that will be for a different Cal Grant. It won't be called Cal Grant A, but there's also an amount allocated for community college. So just be mindful that that is something you'll see if you meet that need-based award. So again, you see in this case, Mickey actually qualifies for a scholarship as well. And again, these amounts can vary. So just know with a scholarship that it's something that will range from school to school. And again, institutional money there, and again, free money, right? So that's definitely the ones that we like to see on there. Now, the loan here is something I want to do a little bit of nuance. Ms. McCrow mentioned the unsubsidized loan in the previous example with Donald Duck, and you see in this one, not only do you see an unsubsidized loan, you see a subsidized loan. The difference between the two is that a subsidized loan, though it is a loan, it is the best kind of loan that you can get, because unlike the unsubsidized loan, the interest is being paid for while you're in school. And so though the repayment and all that sort of happens is similar regardless of which loan you get, like in terms of 6 months after you graduate, but the difference is the interest is not accruing. So you want to see, if you're going to see any kind of loan that's going to be if you had to find a good loan, that's the one. Now you'll notice that when you see the breakdown of the numbers, the federal subsidized loan is a little bit higher than the one for the unsubsidized loan, which is good because again, you want that. But you'll also see when you do the math, 3,500 and 2,000, there's a breakdown there that again equals up to 5,500, which is similar to what Donald Duck had, which was 5,500, but it was only for the unsubsidized loan. So keep in mind that when it comes to federal loans, whether it's subsidized or unsubsidized, that total has a cap. And so when you have both, you want to see more, hopefully, on the subsidized and the unsubsidized loan, but there's a cap, and that number slightly increases each year. And that's a good number to use when you're thinking about what's a reasonable amount, because it is possible you could be offered less, or you can even take less than that amount. But just be mindful that there is a cap. You can't go what that total cap is with when it comes to federal loans. But that's the difference between the subsidized and the unsubsidized loan. Subsidized loan is the better one. The interest is paid for, so you don't have to worry about that loan payment sort of getting calculated at a higher rate, where the unsubsidized loan that interest is going to accrue. So it's not as good. It's good in terms of there being a lower rate, but it's going to be costly a little bit more in the long run compared to the subsidized loan. The next part there, you're going to see work study. So again, this is another need-based program. I should also mention, right, when we talk about these loans, these federal loans, these are need-based, right? So they're keeping that in mind. With federal work study, which is a need-based program, students who receive this award, that number that you see is not actually money that it's not an award in the sense that you immediately get that money. You actually have to get a job that's connected to the work study program, connected to that school. And it could be on campus or off campus. Most of those jobs tend to be on campus. But the benefit of this is that there are some departments connected to the school that have these jobs where if you have work study, they prefer students who have that because part of your paycheck is actually covered by the government. That number, sometimes it's like 50 cents to $1. So this is not money you actually see, but what ends up happening is that departments that see that students, they have jobs that are, work study preferred because those departments benefit because they don't actually have to pay you the full dollar. Like it doesn't come from their funds. Every department has limited funds as to how many students can work, and that's a benefit. So you actually will have an edge in being able to get into some of these jobs because some places do prefer work study. So that means when you have 3,000, that means you have that amount allocated that department gets to use the fund for the students who are working in the organization. So let's pretend that they only have $10,000 that's available to pay student workers. And if you have a $3,000 award, that's $3,000 that doesn't come out of their budget. It comes from the government. So that's a benefit for you. You actually are more likely to have more options in being able to find and secure employment on or off the college campus. So when you see all of that breakdown, you see that total of 47,000. So that's a more significant financial aid package, and you see that again, this is going to vary for every student, but for a family and a student that perhaps demonstrates more need, right, based on what you submit in the FAFSA, this is probably also a situation where the EFC is going to be lower. So the college is trying to do a little bit more to kind of close that gap in terms of what you might be able to get. So this this is an example of a student that can see a wide variety of different options that both, that's need-based. And again, there's loans. I know that we recently, spoke to the juniors about financial aid, and I'm going to reiterate it with the seniors here that when we talk about financial aid, one of the things that we want to highlight between these two is that loans are going to be a part of it. We don't want you to be scared of loans. The world works around lending. It's in housing, it's in our cars. So the thing that we want you to be educated about is that it's not about whether or not you should take a loan. It's about what's reasonable, right? And every family is going to think about this differently. Some families can take more on, some can take some may not be able to take that much at all. But just don't be intimidated by it. Don't be afraid about it. You can reach out. You can talk to the financial officer. You can ask these questions. I'm trying to understand, why did I get this loan versus that loan? Are there other loans I might have to consider? What is this impact? Sometimes you can even ask about work study. If you qualify, you can sometimes, some of these things can be adjusted, which we can talk about it should you have any questions. But now you've got a good sense of the Mickey Mouse example and how it compares to Donald Duck, and you got to see two different so that was one family that had, had some needs and had that Parent Plus loan. In this case, you see that that's not the case because the student, needs more support, and they need to provide other ways of supporting that financial aid package through grants, through another loan that's not necessarily a plus loan where the parents have to get involved. So hopefully that's helpful in terms of giving you some context and giving you a flavor and idea of kind of how two different students, potential students, look like applying to the same sort of school.
That came up was repeating again, what's the difference between a subsidized and an unsubsidized loan? So I'm going to just take a moment and show you a really important website to really look at. And it's through the federal government. Those are really the loans you want to do. They're really significant. And so this is through the studentaid.gov. That's when you know it's the government. This is where you submitted your FAFSA form. Again, you have to submit it every year. So if you don't have an alarm on your phone for October 1st, go ahead and do that. And this shows you the interest rate. Now, your legislators do decide on how much is the interest rate. Like when President Biden came in, he said, hey, hold off on repaying them back. Right. So you can see, that's why Mr. Lorenzo said, don't trip about a loan. There's a lot of people who have done that. The main thing is you have to think of the return on investment. What type of career am I going into? What type of job? And your college counselor can help you figure that out. But remember, anything that's subsidized or unsubsidized, it's in your name, you, the student. And it's a combination, max is $5,500. The subsidized is need-based one. The plus is the parent loan, and that interest rate is always tends to be higher because they have a job that's out there as well. And then if you're wondering, how much it will pay, this is a website, it's on the chat as well, findaid.org, where you could actually put in the numbers and the interest rate, how many years, and it'll calculate what is the grand total going to be.
Another question is, does the work study go to me or to the college?
You will be given a check directly. So a lot of times I tell students is, if you think of work study, not to pay off your tuition, room and board, think of it as a way to pay, just do your everyday expenses. Like maybe I want to treat myself to Starbucks, or maybe I need to get that deodorant. So works. Also, I don't know if all you guys know, they did actually research on work study. And what they discovered on work study was the following. When a student does work study, guess what? They get that connection in a college or university, no matter how small or big. I even had a student who went to small schools, like, I hate it, it's too small. And then they fell in love with it, got amazing jobs because of the connections, right? If I had to work with Professor Lorenzo and I needed a day off because of a big test, Professor Lorenzo will probably give me that day off because he knows my priority is school, not like if I had my job, true story, at Safeway and I only had 4 hours of sleep and study for my final the next day. So they notice that students graduate, not everyone does, and they graduate in 4 years for work study. So that has been really great too. Also, can you kind of go through, like I got accepted, woo! So what's the next step? Do I get my financial? Can you kind of go through the process and then what, while we wait for more questions coming up from our audience?
Yeah, I wanted to add to the work study thing. Another benefit they've shown in terms of studies is that there are students who actually have part-time who are on work study, like they actually do just as well, right? There's nothing that actually like it's that it hurts you, right? But they definitely have shown that the numbers, that magic numbers, somewhere close to 10 hours, right? If you hover in that 8 to 10, maybe 12 max, but like we also are mindful again, right? Thinking that you are a student, this is part-time work, right? So you really hopefully are going to stay within that range. And those students who kind of stay in that range are just as successful in everything that Ms. Carr mentioned in terms of like the benefits, the networking, the flexibility. Those are all the other added benefits. So don't definitely look at it as a means to sort of enhance and improve your experience. Like don't look at it like it's a, sometimes when you think about jobs right now, it is somewhat like a burden in some ways, but in college, it actually can add another dimension of your life. That again, the networking and the future opportunities that can come with it. Like I could actually probably do a session as someone who actually, benefited from work study and got a lot of different opportunities because of that, because of everything I did while I was a student, the things I got to do shortly after this would not have been possible if it weren't for something like that. So I'm a believer in how much that you can do this, and there's benefits. Yes, it means you're going to have to, you will have to work, but you can do a reasonable amount. You're going to have a lot more time in college than you probably don't know yet. So 8 to 10, maybe even 12 hours max of being able to work a little bit, it can won't disrupt your college experience at all. It will add more. It doesn't hurt to have the pocket money. I know it helped me in San Diego with being able to go to the taco shop every once in a while. You need that break from the res hall food too. So those things are benefits. But going back to like this idea of like, so what happens? You get in and you got your award letter and you're trying to figure out, so now, what happens, what happens next, right? So, I definitely think when we start talking about the numbers, it's important that you have to have a document where you actually start putting all these things, because you're going to see that these award letters are going to look different, right? So what you want to do is sort of create a document where you can actually start tracking and starting to see, so that you can compare what does the aid look like and how does that differ from school to school. And it's important that you do this because when you start looking at value and you're, let's say you're looking at UCs and CSUs and you're also looking at private schools, you're going to begin to see the differences of how your financial aid package looks like. And when you're talking to your family, you're trying to figure out like, what is the value? You got to look at these different factors to see like, well, what school is offering us more need-based aid versus loans versus merit-based aid? You have to start thinking and reflecting. Some of you might have been excited about some schools, and let's say you did get into those schools, and then you look at the award letter. Sometimes you end up being less excited, or you're like, maybe I got to take a step back. And then maybe there were schools that were like, a college counselor recommended, say, hey, this is a school that we think might be a good fit. And you're kind of like, okay, I'll apply. I don't know how excited I am. And then you get the financial aid package and you're like, oh, I'm actually a little bit more intrigued about this than I was before. And you start having this whole other different conversation. So with the award letters, and as you're trying to process and think about these things, you definitely want to approach it with an open mind. In some ways, it's kind of like reevaluating your list all over again, right? You had impressions of what you thought the results would play like. Then it actually happened. So then you get excited about yeses and nos and dealing with disappointment. And then you now have to process your yeses. And we hope that you're going to have more than a couple options. Now you actually have to reevaluate and begin to see, all right, what matters and what is going to play a role in how this is going to influence. Because just to keep this in mind, like I've had students that think about this and they realize, well, what if I have plans to go to grad school? And the parents are like, look, this school is going to give you more aid. If you get this aid now, we can actually help you with your med school plans, your law school plans. So you have to think about long-term ramifications. And you don't want to just make assumptions that just because that they gave you this or that, it doesn't mean, that it's worse than or less than the other schools. Every family, every student has to walk through and be able to realize, okay, well, we thought highly about X named school. And then you look at the package and maybe you might think less of it. And that's okay. That's part of the process, but it's good. You have to have that conversation, reflect and figure out again. So what do you want and what's reasonable? Because we also are going to be worried if you get a if a student wanted to meet with me and say, look, Mr. Lorenzo, they gave me a $50,000 plus loan package, then I would say, okay, hold on. Have you talked to your family? Like, even though you said, but we really like this school, we liked everything, but I think we're going to make it work. You have to have those conversations to see, well, do you have any other options to look at? I've had to talk some students out of that, and they were really thankful afterwards. They're like, oh my gosh, thank you for doing that. Like, they almost walked away from a full ride versus a school that gave them less money, but then they realized, wait, this is going to help me in my long term. She wanted to go to med school or do something engineering, realized that this school had everything that she needed, but she didn't have to worry about all that. So those are things that you want to reflect on. Take your notes, compare the aids, have conversations, and then go from there. But you definitely have to reevaluate, have a new open mind to the process, and then again, utilize us. We're here to help you. We've seen these things, and if need be, if you have questions, we can help you decode some of the stuff, or even see where you might be able to perhaps appeal or follow up and ask.
Speaking of questions, we have one. So, and just to echo what Mr. Lorenzo said, I still remember the student who went in my office. Parents worked blue collar jobs like mine, and their family was going to get a $50,000, $60,000 plus loan. And there's so much work injury when you work in the labor force. And like, do you understand what this would mean if someone gets injured and they can't pay that? So, and sometimes they listen to great people like Mr. Lorenzo, and sometimes they don't listen, and all I do is pray, that it all works out at the end for that. But there is a great question out there. They say, and you were just going to go into it, Mr. Lorenzo, about can I appeal for more merit scholarship? And if so, how should I do it? So let's decode that, because that's actually like 3 questions in one beautiful, one big question. So for those who don't know, like, what merit? So there's merit. So merit is based on a talent. So if Oprah Winfrey adopts you, you can still get a merit scholarship, right? There's so many different. It can be based on grades, talent, who you are, how you inspire them, etc. But merit scholarship, if Lorenzo goes Lorenzo scholarship, he's going to have a set amount saying, well, this scholarship is max is $10,000. So there's not fluctuation. A college can go, okay, we'll make it more, because it's from a donor. That's why you're like, is there really a left-handed scholarship? Yes, because somebody wanted that. Yeah, believe it or not. So, but you could demonstrate need. So let's just pretend, for one of the examples, Donald Duck says, this is all I got. I've had that a lot. That's it. And again, you should take a moment, like Mr. Lorenzo, let's take a pause and look at that. Because I remember students go, oh my God, that's it. But then they got blown away for some other ones that are amazing. Not all have that story, but some. And if you still like, that's it, what you want to do is go, okay, what's happening? Think for a moment, class of 21, what happened in 2020? There are wonderful families who've had a lot of job loss, medical expenses. Wait, I need to improve my Wi-Fi, so much is going on. So your income that you had to report because of prior may be a lot higher than what you really have right now. So you can write an appeal letter, you or your parent, just make sure it's done ASAP. That's my opinion. I'll tell you why. Because you want to say, this is why. Now, it doesn't have to be a personal statement. You just have to say, like, for example, like, I'll be honest, I'll share I had to get better Wi-Fi at home. I had to get more different equipment for my kids. Maybe let's just say I had a decrease in pay, whatever it is, just spell it out, get to the point, and explain that. And you don't have to show any proof, but be prepared to show proof, right? On that, and send it in and follow up with an email within like a week or less. And here's because phone calls may be hard. Not everyone's working in their office. Do try, some do. And then what a school can do if they have the financial resources. Remember, every school has big bucket of money, small bucket of money. They will give you what's called a grant, right? So to meet that need. Sometimes they'll steal it from the federal government. Sometimes if it's a California school, they could play with the numbers That's a very complicated story, but I've seen it done for Cal Grant, right? And then sometimes they have their own grant from the university. So they could do that. But here's the story you have to be prepared for. Every school, and the reason I use UCs is, for example, I had a student had 2 different package deals, and one student wanted to appeal. Literally, they were sending money to another country. So that's not reported on the FAFSA form. And so they wanted to explain that to the colleges. And the colleges said, we will not look at any appeal letters, this is on one school, after May 31st. The deadline to register to only one school is May 1st. So that was a hard decision that family had to make. And this family decided, well, we're going to go somewhere else. It's too much of a gamble for us, right? Because not just because you appeal doesn't mean you're going to get it, right? So you have to assume you won't get it. And the reason why you really want to make sure that you follow up with the colleges, because this is the biggest year that colleges have lost money, and this is the biggest year that the whole country has lost money. That does not mean there's not money for you, but you just have to advocate. Miss Kemper Verdi was here. She was saying, make your financial aid officer your new best friend. So Mr. Lorenzo, I'm gonna have him follow up on that, and please keep on getting more questions, because Mr. Lorenzo was on the college side, because a lot of people, correct me if I'm wrong, assume that the admission officer has all this control. And I kept saying financial aid, financial aid. So can you give me your example and experiences be on the other side of the table in working at the colleges?
Yeah. So, here's the thing, right? So you think about the process, and yes, you definitely want to be friends with your financial aid officer, but your rep, the admissions rep, is still going to be an advocate for you, right? So I think about, there's a lot of stories I could think of, but just keep this in mind that communication, right? So again, thinking about how if there is an appeal, you want to be quick about doing it, but then bring the rep in the loop, right? Because the reps, obviously, especially if you've been in touch with some of them since the beginning of, when you first applied, or maybe before you went to the info session, and you've had casual questions here and there, they can still help, because if they know you really are interested, right? Like you're not just playing a game here and you're like, well, can you just help me with this, this, and this? And you actually are asking great follow-up questions like, look, we have a situation. We had more expenses. We had Wi-Fi issues. My parent, lost their job and had a, whatever specific scenario. If you bring that up to the rep has some basic knowledge and can be truthful and honest to be able to say, look, I think this is what you can do if you want to make an appeal, right? Like they can, because the rep is familiar with the circumstances that have a better chance or less of a chance of getting an appeal. So they're a good place to start. But eventually, right? And if you don't know, they can connect you and be like, who's your financial aid officer? Let me get you connected, because the financial aid office, yes, you're going to be your friend, but I can always tell you, they're going to get bombarded with phone calls and emails. So this is sort of, I don't think of it's a trick. It's not like a sneaky way to get in there. But if you work with the admissions rep, they can kind of help, help go directly to finance. Because I did that all the time. Like there would be families who would call, and I had to screen it myself and figure out, is this legit? Is this someone just asking a general question? I would have to kind of play air traffic control and be like, okay, you know what? Go to the website and look this up, or go to the financial office and look at this. But the ones who were communicating and were open and you explain, the more details, the better. You don't want to just send an email that says, hey, I have a question about, that's like the worst communication you can send. You want to give details. You want to explain what it is. You want to appeal merit. You want to appeal need-based aid. You have to be very specific about what the issue is, because remember, the colleges are aware of how this works. They know that there are families who try to play a game out of this, and they try to negotiate, and they're trying to say, well, this school gave us this money. A lot of reps don't like that. They don't want to get into a negotiating game. So if you're truthful and you're honest, and again, if you work with a college counselor, we can also be perhaps someone who can help you. Like if you're trying to figure out, how do I go about doing this? We can give you, here are the things we want you to share, because we know your situation and background, and we can help you communicate those things. So if you do those things right, I remember I'd get off the phone, I got an email, and I got a very good explanation. I literally would just go down to the financial office and said, look, I got this scenario. I'm going to forward this to you. Is this something that we can do? And because I have that access, I can talk to the counselor. I could do that. And now, even though it's virtual now, they can still do that. They'll be able to immediately follow up and say, look, they can get you ahead of the queue, because believe me, their voicemails, their emails, because a lot of the messages they get are all the generic, like, I need to talk to you. Can you explain this? Can you explain that? But the more specific, and you talk to the rep, they can amplify your voice. They can amplify your concern, because they know you're serious, right? They can say, look, this is a student. Have they followed up with you? Because sometimes it helps when they know, oh, so you're connected? Yeah, I got a call from this family. This is good to know that they reached out to you. So I know that you're probably more likely to be serious. So if you do that communication on both fronts, you definitely want to do that. The rep can still be your ally in this process if you communicate accordingly.
Yeah, and I have to attest, there was a student, because remote learning was not really working for them, and they just felt very isolated for the campus they chose. And they were like, do you feel that you made a mistake, right? It's all going over the summertime. And there was another school that accepted them, but this student needed full need. And I said, hey, so-and-so, is there a possibility, I don't want to offer this to a kid, that if you have enough money in your budget to get to this kid, if they go there, he goes, you know what, Anna Maria, I'll look, but they have to be real serious. I said, okay, don't do anything. I just don't want to start the ball rolling. And then we talked about, as Mr. Lorenzo said, again, the pros and cons. Nothing's going to be perfect. It isn't. Otherwise, life would be boring, right? And then the student says, you know what, I'm going to stick it out, and they're happy where they're at, right? But it's scary, right? I knew somebody who got a huge discount, never had financial aid, and the parents said, you have to go to this school. And they're like, I remember where they were sitting, how they were sitting, like, I don't want to go there. I don't want to go there. And we were just talking about it, because it was a good name school, top rank and stuff like that, but not the name that a lot of people in our community go to. And I love this school. I think it's like the friendliest school. There's one, like, it's like an SI, but they did go. The parents said, you follow the money, as Mr. Delaney would say. And then I followed up later, a couple of years, and go, oh, I love it. It's amazing. So I think that's something that's important to realize as well too. Maybe at this time, unless there's more questions, let's highlight some more like success and horror stories. And I'm going to start off one which happens every year. And that's what we do. This is actually all these workshops. I don't know if you guys know, Miss Wong's like, we need to do more. So shout out to her and all the rest of our team members. I will get students who get financial aid award letters. And like, that's it. I said, okay, I need as many scholarships as possible. And it's April. Right now it's peak. Like, I could give you a scholarship maybe almost every day, actually every day to do. So I'm not saying drop your schoolwork or anything. You still have to graduate. You need sanity. But really, the schools are going to give you the most money. So then you need to kind of relook at your list, do that net price calculator, and be hopeful. I had one student goes, oh my God, this school get more money than this Ivy League school, right? Shout out to Williams College. Those are some things to keep in mind. Don't assume there's going to be just a big rainbow of money just happening to go there. Scholarships are great, but they're tedious and they help buffer. They're the bumper car, but they're not the engine to the car to help you to drive you to your college. What about you, Miss Lorenzo? What is something that is like an oops, and then oh my God, until we get some more questions out there?
Actually, I have one. There's a question about like what's the time frame, right? Between, for those of you who recognize, some of you applied regular, and so some of you may not have had any acceptances yet, so you're waiting and you might be wondering, so how long does it take between, so I hear the good news, you get excited, then you're like, okay, what is the financial aid? When is that? And typically I would say, depending on the school, it can be a week or two. Sometimes when you get an acceptance, this is what might happen. You might hear about initial financial aid. So in some cases, if you receive merit-based aid, like let's say a scholarship, you might actually already see that upon your acceptance. It says not only have you been accepted, but you've been awarded X amount of money. And then they might say, and then look out for the rest of your financial aid later. Sometimes they'll just give you the announcement and then they will say, please check your portal, please wait a week or two, and then we will upload and we're going to send your actual financial aid package. So It typically doesn't happen all at the same time. You'll get the acceptance, and depending on the school, again, you might get some information, but most of it will come at a later time, again, within a week or two. And if it's something that's taking longer, definitely let us know. I mean, I'm sure Ms. McCarr has examples soon. I know I've heard from students who are like, I still haven't gotten my package. And I'm like, how long has it been? It's like, yeah, it's been like 3 weeks or almost a month. And I'm like, okay, that seems off. Like that seems a little off. So that might be a reason to nudge, right? Like whether we say, you know what, why don't you follow up with the rep and let them know you haven't heard anything? Because again, things can get caught. I mean, again, you talk about like we send documents out to the colleges. Sometimes things happen the other way too. So it may not have been an issue you did. It may not have been something that something just got stuck in the system, whether their award letter went to somebody else. I mean, weird things happen like that. So just be sure you communicate. So I would say give it a week or two, but if it gets longer to like 3 to 4 weeks, you definitely should let the college council know so that we can troubleshoot and figure out, because we might have context. They like, oh wait, did you see the email? And they actually, maybe they said, it takes about a month. Okay, well if they told you that, then you have to wait a month. But I like to use that time frame because we definitely want to make sure you're checking your information and you're kind of doing that work and communicating with us if something comes up. Because this is like, it's one thing when you're sending your stuff. Now it's another thing when you're waiting for stuff. So the same process still works in terms of communicating and let us know, because we don't know, right? We're always basing it on the part now is like, you have to tell us what you're hearing and what you're experiencing with the admissions and the award letter so that we can advocate and advise accordingly.
Yeah, and I think one thing that if I think about biggest mistakes that happens, and there's and you know two things you mentioned, right? If things are off, well, don't also forget 2020, 2021 is a very off year. We've never seen early decision letters come out so late. You know, we're hoping that won't happen with award letters, but it may, because they've had record applications. That doesn't mean spots are opening up more, but they have had record issues. Like families are pouring in who never needed money. It's like, I don't have the money now, and stuff like that. So just communicate. It's hard to be patient, but use us as an advocate. But here's one thing is you have to be your own advocate. So I think it's important to take a pause and just kind of reflect, okay, am I having senioritis? Who can I go to help get me on target, right? That may be a family member, a classmate. It may be, even just communicate with your college counselor or your PAC counselor or whoever, because it's hard when you have classes, senioritis, this anticipation. Maybe you're a TikTok star, something like that, right? Whatever it may be, or you're working, just helping your family, or someone's getting sick. Everyone has legit reasons. But you need to kind of figure out what can you put on pause, because if you really need financial aid, you need to put something that's not necessary on pause, right? And really focus on each of your portals to say, have I uploaded all the documents in all my forms and by the deadline, right? Missing a deadline is heartbreaking, because it's not that you're not worthy to get that opportunity. It's just life got in the way. And don't torture yourself. What's done is done, but try to avoid that, right? By taking that self-reflection pause. Or the other thing is like, I know I'm a procrastinator, but I'll just do things, or I'll do it or you're that self-sufficient, I'll do it all by myself. But this is a confusing process for everyone. I cannot tell you how many times I've been in a room of college counselors, believe it or not, there are some people older than me who still don't know some of the stuff or get confused, right? Me too. Like I always, me, I'm always like looking at stuff. And I remember the student where they're like, wait, why is this one school giving me very little money, but everyone's giving me a lot of money? Well, they rush on doing their verification form. They put one supplier, the wrong family size. That's it. And when we got the award letter, I remember I spoke to the college, like you could hear the pause, like they're literally saying, and you fill in the blank. And they go, okay, you have to do an appeal process. You have to do. And the kid's like, all right, I guess I'm not going that school, because it's like, I don't know if I'll get it, and he's very happy now, right? So but you gotta look at iDocs. If the school's not using iDocs, you know who I'm talking about, those CSS profile schools, their own portal information, because everyone does it. follow up is everything's complete. If it doesn't sound like it, then it doesn't feel like it. It probably isn't it. Even if it's a school that's FAFSA, did they ask for verification? It's a FAFSA only school. So just make sure you have everything in there, because the shock later on is so hard to repair. So that is something to know to do. And then also I want to say this, we don't have time to go my story. I am the perfect example of what not to do for college financially when I was a senior in high school, right? I'm the poster child for it. And I do want to say this for everyone. It all works out in the end, right? As long as you believe in yourself and you learn from your mistakes, right? Embrace the mistakes. It happens, right? If you miss that deadline, you were too independent, did everything by yourself, you just got caught up with life, then you learn from that so you can grow. And to be honest, I think you'll be more successful later on because of that mistake. Don't try to make it, because it hurts. I realized when the college gave me a nasty information from financial, I still remember where the sun set, okay? And I am half century old. Mr. Lorenzo, what's something else, maybe a success story that you want to tell kids about?
The one, I think that kind of on the the proactive tip that you were kind of again, I think I'm channeling back to like being on the college side, because we're in this waiting period, right? Like we're in this third quarter where sometimes it feels like it's the dog days of the high school season, where it's like, oh my gosh, like I think Adam was talking about, like, did it take forever to get to February? Like it seemed like January was like 2 months long, and so we're kind of slugging along, and you can get kind of complacent. But I want to channel students that perhaps maybe you haven't had that hard talk yet about financial aid, right? And then maybe there's this like, well, let's just wait and see. I urge you to start having that in sort of in being proactive, to have something so that before these award letters come and you start looking at the numbers, you're not going to be, let's say, completely like, it's to kind of help temper expectations, right? Whether you're going to get too excited or you're going to get too low, is that if you haven't had a conversation around like, so what exactly is the family commitment, right? I know some families might have prolong and wait. Like, we're just going to wait until we wait for that award letter. It might be a good time to start doing a little bit of that before, because I can remember too many stories where when it did hit, and this is heartbreaking from the college side, and these were families where like it was just the parent, like the student wasn't even in there. The parents set up a meeting, and they said they didn't want, like they were trying to figure out, like they could not tell their child, like no, like they wanted them to go through the process, but then hoping that like maybe it wouldn't work out, and then now they're like, they got caught in this like really delicate bind where like, oh my gosh, my child really wants to come here, but I don't think I can say it. Like they were being really aggressive and trying to like, what else can we do? What else can we do? And then as I was kind of counseling through the session, they kind of like softened up and realized that it was like, look, I'm sorry if this came out really aggressive, but it's like, here's what's going on in the background. And I was just like, gosh, that must be intense. Like I understand that they really wanted to do everything for their child, but they didn't want them to get involved. But then they got to the reality of the numbers, and this is April, right? Like it's April, and it's like, okay, I don't know, there's much more we can really do. Like you already filled out the FAFSA, like they already did all the steps. They were coming to me like as a last minute sort of plea, because I had been working with them throughout the whole process, and that was a hard sort of situation to be in, because there was really nothing else. I couldn't do anything else at that point. They had really exhausted everything, but they hadn't had that conversation. Every year there were always situations like that. I'm like, gosh, why do families wait until the award letter to come? And I'm not saying you have to like have an Excel sheet and a calculator and figure everything out and say, well, if it costs this, and this, and some of you may have had some conversation, but I think it's good to have some better dialogue about it, because you recognize this being the pandemic and not knowing like, what is the family financial situation moving forward, right? If you have siblings, whether they're older or younger, like, is that going to play a role as to whether or not you can, what's reasonable, what's unreasonable? So do that sort of, do that sort of homework. On the plus side, I can think of situations. This is, again, like, I love this part talking about like you being your best advocate. Those were some of the best situations I had. I remember having students that came back and like, they had their list and they got into, let's say, 5 or 6 schools. Then they did their homework and they got it down to 3 or 2. And then they're like, okay, here's the situation. I like this other school, but is it possible for me to can I try to, get a little bit more? And I remember being able to kind of help them advocate for themselves. And they got and I was very realistic. I told them, look, you may not get everything that you're, but it's not going to hurt to ask. And let's see what happens. And they ended up, the school worked with them because it was a student that had done well. They had reached out, didn't come out of nowhere. And they ended up getting that money. And they're like, wow, Mr. Look, I actually got, I didn't get all of it, but I got a little bit extra more and it's going to help the family. And now I'm going to go there, right? So to that point that Mr. McCarroll's being your best advocate is so important in this. You just don't know. Don't be afraid to ask for it because you might actually get it. You worked this hard to get to this point, and don't feel like you can't ask for more. You don't deserve more. There's a difference between that whole merit and need, right? We're talking about need, and you're talking about a situation, and you've done that math, right? You've done that homework, and you realize that, and this was the case, the student, and again, they weren't and this wasn't a student who just was on the lower income, they were, probably a middle class family, but they hadn't realized she had a younger sibling also going to school. The dad was transitioning jobs, the mom. So they had a circumstance, but they were kind of feeling. But am I But I'm not I'm not a family that has a lot of need. I'm no, that doesn't matter. Everything's situational in context, but don't eliminate yourself because you don't know what's going to happen if you ask. And she did get some merit, so I think that helped. They were able to say, you know what, you did get some merit, and we would like to have you come here, and if you're really serious, then we'll give you that amount. Because if you're not playing games, right, then that's where I was able to even work with the rep to kind of see what does this family need to do to to see. And he was very honest too, so we were very consistent letting the family know it's not a shoo-in that you're going to get all of this, but you might get something. And then that's what ended up happening. Even last year I had a student that, and in this case the family, this was a different situation, but this kind of goes up to that proactive thing. The family actually had mentioned they needed a certain amount of money, and we went back to the school. They got the money, right? The student got the money, and but then the parents end up saying, look, we really just don't want you to go that far. It was a school that's going to require me to go to Ohio. And that was heartbreaking in another way because we had worked hard to ask for that money. Even the student, was in a tough situation, but I wish that they had that conversation. That was one of the things that she regretted, that they didn't probably have enough conversation. This wasn't so much just the cost, but the fact that they didn't want her to leave, they didn't want her to leave the area. So it's important, right? Be your advocate. The more you can converse and have these things, the better you're going to be. So when because the numbers make it a reality, right? You start to think about it. So don't wait until those numbers come. Be your advocate, have those conversations, better idea. So you can celebrate the moment, be excited, but then also be thoughtful and reflective. Okay, how we're going to do this.
You have to have that hard reality as a parent. My parents just pretty much said, you got to do it all on your own. And that was the best thing. Because don't worry, they still love me. I got that. And that's the most important. But it helped me and my siblings to prepare. So when I had my college age kids, my kid always, yeah, Mom, I know. There's only so much. I know, right? But, the reason I kept shaking my head when Mr. Lorenzo was talking, because I kept on, oh yeah, I remember that student, or I remember that room. So you need to really have that hard conversation. And two things. Tell them your college counselor said you need to know. So today, if you had to pay what it is, and some family conversations are harder, well, we're there too, right? We can have that conversation on there because it could be very devastating, to say it simply, right? So that's something that's really important to know. And yes, and the good part, know your worth, right? If you ask for more money, they're not going to take your acceptance, right? They're just going to maybe, the worst case scenario, they'll say no to you, right? As long as you put us up front with everything, that's important. And I remember my girlfriend, if you don't know, I used to live with my friend. Since we were conception, we were friends. We lived right next to a family of 10. And when her first kid went to college, first gen kid, they got into a school, and it's God, we're upper middle and class family. I don't know if they give money, but Anne Marie, we just can't do it. I go and go talk to the financial aid. tell them you're serious. I know you have this big other offer. Don't play that comparison game. That's a back pocket thing because nobody likes saying, well, it's like sometimes like, well, this person, if I go out with that date with that person, they'll do this. You wouldn't like that. Colleges don't. But I said, just in case, but be always respectful. I said, be assertive, but be totally respectful because you're asking for a handout. And that's why people don't ask. Well, I don't want a handout. Well, don't think of it as a handout. Give back to your community, the college. Be someone at that school that gives back to others, and that you'll be all worth it. I can even tell you other, but there's that. And guess what? Upper middle class, and this is a school that puts more money in buildings and students. I won't say who they are. They got the money. And it worked because as Ms. Lorenzo, they were being really, really honest. So you need to have that honest conversation with yourself, with your family, and then also if need to, the college. And remember, we're there to help you. Now, I have a last question before we wrap up because, most seniors don't want to think about this, but my gut feeling, this is a very popular game that college admissions do, and for good reason, for good business. If I get on the wait list and I am a financial aid applicant, what are some tips? Again, I'm going to ask you to put that college hat back on. Should I be aware of that makes me hopeful, but also realistic? And speak your truth, Mr. Lorenzo.
Yeah, that's like it's funny you mentioned that because that's like that article I got quoted on, right? Like this is one of the things that I brought up, like I think is going to be the real issue that's going to come out with this particular class. I think about the pandemic is that I know there's a lot of press that's going on about test optional and increased applications. And we're so great that we've, it's getting kind of blown out of proportion. I'm waiting to see how the wait list part is going to sort of play out. The part that a lot of families I think don't understand with how wait list works is that it is a mechanism in which colleges use to meet enrollment. And so should be no surprise, right? The wait list happens from all the way to the most selective schools, all the way down to the schools that are not as selective. The wait list is a tool because they recognize that when students go through this process and they have all of these options they can pick from, you can only pick one. So these schools are going to end up scrambling to figure out, how else can we fill these spots? And, the way that this works at most schools, right, the ones who actually have the funding, you might be hopeful that they might be able to offer something because you have to be explicit about that if you're going to advocate for yourself. The more you're honest and you can share that, then that's something that you want to be able to, to bring up, because typically with wait lists, there's just not a lot. And there are only a certain kind of schools that tend to have that aid available. But you have to I want you to be thinking about the realities that go in thinking that you're not going to get as much, because you can't compare it to the ones where you do get in and you have the aid. Now, again, I think it's going to be the exception if you might be able to get something that matches it or even exceeds. But I'm just thinking about what happened last year. I'm sure Ms. Vaccaro has examples too from last year where some of the students that got put on the wait list and got pulled, that was the first thing I thought about. And then the students reported back and said, they're actually going to meet everything I need. But I'm like, if you really want to go to that school and they're willing to meet your aid, then go for it. But I want to still be cautiously optimistic. I mean, that happened a lot more than it happened in previous years. And I anticipate that that's going to, again, be the case. And we might see that even happen with the acceptances, that more schools might accept more, because the wait list are students who they've deemed admissible, but they just don't have the spots. So they use it to balance out how they fill their seats with enrollment. But I think there's a good chance that there are some students who are going to get in that may have been put on the wait list for this particular cycle because there's so many more students. So I think that's going to be a positive thing. But the financial aid part is going to be the part that's going to sort of get played out. So hope for the best, right? But plan for it not to be as ideal. I think if you are on the wait list, I think you can be more hopeful than other classes. Not only in the sense that you might get pulled up, but you actually might get aid. But you can't play that game and hope that, June 1st, one of these schools are going to play and I can go there. Because it's also likely that the schools that do admit you, they're going to probably be able to give you the better aid offer because I'm going to be surprised if you're going to get an offer that's more generous if it's waitlisted. I mean, I can't think of a situation that happened last year. I was just surprised at the fact that some of them got their need, because typically you don't get a lot of need-based aid because all the grant money, all that scholarship money is already zapped out, when they give it to all the students who got admitted. So that's kind of the way I'll kind of give the seniors to kind of think about that as we move forward.
And I think, Mr. Lorenzo, it's like roulette, right? Like you could bet on black, you bet on red. Like, my guess is that because they lost so much money in athletics and sports and transforming for remote learning, they have less money, right? But we don't know, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that's something that's key. But, Mr. Lorenzo gave so many great examples about how this is a business. One last word, when you're doing the comparison list, I think a lot of people just look at how everyone's reacting about the school, what they found in the regular research, and then the financial aid, which are all important, and that emotional, social aspect too, right? Where's my support program? But don't forget about return on investment. Mm-hmm. Return on investment is there that support program that will believe in you, right? That's so important. I've had students come back like, God, I don't know if they want to support me. Number two, the Career Center, like look at pay scale, college salary report. I would say it's a little bit outdated because it's pre-COVID-19, but what's a job market? It saddened me that during COVID-19, when we had our seniors graduate from our students who graduate from their college, they couldn't find a job, right? And I'm like, well, then that college failed them. This is a hardworking student and they're not working in their field, and that's not their choice. It's just because of survival. So don't be hesitant to talk to, support programs. How will you support me? Or what is your plans for COVID-19? Maybe you're like, I'm done with remote, or I can deal with remote, right? We don't know, right? How's the dorm situation going to be? What's their backup plan? And again, that return on investment, I mean, that's the social emotional part, but don't forget that career part, because jobs don't land on people's laps anymore. Right. So, and if you don't get a work study, remember, work study is not guaranteed for you to get the job. You have to interview with it. So a lot of times, right, I knew people like, well, I want that job with that professor, so I'll still apply. So those jobs are open to all. They just advertise for work study. So just keep that in mind. Working on that campus, building that resume, that connection, and most importantly, have fun, even now, right? Like I have, there's a saying, there's a will, there's a way, that you can make your dreams possible. You have to remember that what's beautiful about this country and why so many people come here, there's so many pathways, right? As long as you are open, you use the resources around you, and you love and take care of yourself, number one, 24/7. And if you don't for a moment, get those people in your support system to remind you, including the responsible adult, to remind you otherwise, and it will all work out. It's not about where you start college, it's where you end with college and into your career. That's the most exciting part. That's where you spend the bulk of your life. And then, though this is it for our presentation, I'll let Ms. Lorenzo end with the last few words. Remember, your college counselors are here for you. If you just need a moment to just vent, whether it be with us or your personal academic counselor, we're there for you. And do know that the college does not define who you are, you do. Mr. Lorenzo?
Yeah, I can't top that. You actually use words that I've often even said to some of the juniors right now when they talk about their college, and when you look at the impressive profiles and backgrounds that everyone brings into these conversations, every once in a while I'll bring that as a reminder, depending on the conversation, that you are the driver's seat. You own this. You own this process. So it's never going to be about the college. It's never going to be about the college shaping who you are. It's going to be you. Doing that, and that you're going to be the one giving the college the name that it can stand behind in the future. So we believe in that. So again, we're here for you, right? Let us know. I know, again, it's that weird time. I know I've had those emails where like, oh, Mr. Lorenzo, I haven't talked to you in a while, because we get so caught up in all the application stuff, and all of a sudden, not that we disappear. I mean, we're talking to the juniors. Our cycle is already moving, but we know that we're still, we know that you're still waiting and wondering and thinking and trying to figure out. So, don't hesitate to reach out and let us know how we can continue to be helpful as we wait alongside you.
Yeah. This program, right, where they help students transition into college, right? Because you get advanced taking classes, you have a support team, and then you also have other students with similar backgrounds for you. Damn lucky, because I don't know. I know Mr. Lorenzo also went to a public university as well. I won't say that. No, he'll say it later. But it's very easy to be a number. I've shared with my students, because I was working supporting myself, that only one teacher my undergrad knew my name, and that's also my fault, because I just didn't have the time and prioritize just paying for college. But also, every have that type of support program that has been really helpful. And whether it's San Francisco State or another school, any student I know who gets involved in a support program that is career, emotional, and professional, I rarely hear back from those students saying, Ms. Vaccaro, can you help me with this, Ms. Vaccaro? Because they have their system there. And I'm like, I love helping people, but it's so great that you have it there, because it's discouraging. So the Metro program, and then another shout out about San Francisco State too, just to let people know, it is highly ranked in many different programs, whether it's broadcasting, their business program. Don't believe me? They just got a $25 million donation from someone who's a big guy in real estate, San Francisco graduate. Internships at George Lucas, like it's just for San Francisco State. Also Pixar, another San Francisco State graduate. So it's and then also too, I'm just gonna be honest with you, I was able to do my undergrad graduate debt free, right? So I made that choice so that I could to expedite my college experience, and also not do to be able to do other things that I wanted to do as well too. So that was a great choice.
They're going to be available at other similar institutions. I mean, even private schools now will have these, like at gosh, I'm going blank at same as well, it's not called High Potential. It changed the name, but it's like a summer bridge program, right? Like I went through that as a student at UCSD, and like that plugged me in, and I have some of the best mentorships, friendships, network because of that. We got plugged into a group, and we were, again, a lot of other first gen underrepresented students. So we all got, and all of us now are the ones doing this kind of work, right? And so easy for me to, pick up the phone and, or reach out and connect. So we know that a lot of these programs are available. So, but the cool thing now is I think that private schools are realizing that to help these like onboarding, and my program is like a first year transition. I mean, the first year experience is so critical to having students get on board and then be successful. So in whatever shape or form it is, like, I mean, the career stuff wasn't as big during my time, but I imagine now everything that Ms. Vaccaro said, like those three things are all going to be integrated, right? There's a mentorship component, there's a support component, social emotional component, and then even a career advising, academic advising. So now they're becoming more integrated because they want to help see these students go through, not just get there, but stay there and persist.
Gonna give you all of me as much as you can. like you make me feel the way